Mr. Alexandro, thank you very much for joining me under the Human Rights Tree.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine.
Okay, before we start talking about, today the topic is freedom of religion in Brazil. Before I start talking about the subject, I would like you to introduce yourself and tell me a little bit about your background.
Okay, I'm Brazilian. I raised up in Brazil in the countryside. My background, I was raised in the Catholic Church. I'm a lawyer in Brazil, and also I have a master degree in United States in the legal system, U.S. legal system. So I have some understanding about the law about the two countries. And I also have made some studies about FDI and human rights during my LLM. And I'm curious about culture of both Brazil and the cultural shocks that we see here in America, because this is a country where we have a great diversity of immigrants. And we have all this difference of culture, religion, and all these aspects of society.
Well, what is the name of your town? Where is located in Brazil?
My town is located in Belo Horizonte. It's called Curvelo.
Okay. Is it in
But I was raised in another town in north of this city, about 800 kilometers, with which in Brazil is okay. It's half a day of trip or something, because
Is it
it's
in the West
a large
Coast?
country.
Is it in the west or north central of Brazil?
Oh, this is a great question. In Brazil, we divide the country in southeast, which is the most developed part of the country, which consists of 4 states. The more famous: Rio, São Paulo, Minas Gerais, which is my state, and Espírito Santo. Then we have the central region where sits the capital of Brazil. The south, which is also a very rich area, and the northeast, which was the first part of the country to be colonized, and is the poorest country. And of course, what we call the north, which is the most representative aspect of this part of the country, is the rainforest.
Would you mind share a little briefly the history of Brazil from I'm kind of dividing it in three parts: before the Portuguese, during the Portuguese, and when Brazil come to independence.
Okay, before the Portuguese, the country was occupied by vast number of tribes that were, in general, they were very diverse tribes, but the majority speak one tongue that was Tupi or Guarani, and that's why the Portuguese call it Tupi Guarani. But today the people know that we're a more vast diversion of tribals there. It was not territorially very well divided. At least there's no records for that. And the religion were related to the experience they have with the land. So they have deities that were representative of aspects of nature. And of course, then came the Portuguese. And the issue about the tribes in Brazil, they are much more alike with the tribes that still exist in Amazon. But they were not so developed. That's the tribes that the Spanish met in Central America, Mexico, and in the west coast of South America. In the Central America to the west coast, there's a large number of tribals. Probably they were from the same root that were the Inks, Mayas, and Aztecs. These three great branches, they were very developed. They have cities. they could carve stone and everything, but the Indians in Brazil, I think they were more, let's say, rich, but they don't have mostly a large number of tribals. They live only by collection and hunt and fishing, which the country is still very rich on the natural resources.
So
So they didn't build cities.
so basically, before the Portuguese came, there was diverse religions, but there was tribes already, and those tribes' religion was based on nature. Is it the case?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, something like if you see, it's similar to any other tribe in the world, just like if you see the tribes in Africa,
Mm,
they have a number of deities.
okay.
And this is part of our culture too, because the Portuguese came and they start to with they bring the uh, company of Jesus.
Yeah,
That's
when the Portuguese came?
they came in 1520. They discover Brazil.
Okay.
They divide Brazil and Spain through a
Mm,
treaty
okay.
that's called Tordesilhas. It's a treaty that says that a number of miles from a meridian that was in the sea.
Mm,
This is the limit between the Portuguese crown and the rest is Spain. Spain didn't know what they had, the size of the country.
okay.
Eventually, during the other 200 years, the
Mm,
Portuguese expanded the frontier, and this treaty eventually was
mm,
lay off. They didn't disregard the treaty,
mm,
and Portuguese came in the 16th century. They didn't start colonization. They didn't find anything very useful. Later, they start to try to occupy land.
mm,
They divide in 13 uh, strips of land, to 13 bands,
mm,
and give to some noble to take care. But it took a long time for the Portuguese crown
mm,
to start to develop the land in terms of occupation, because the Spanish found large cities in Mexico, for example,
mm,
and they start to seed gold and take care of the land and all that thing. Uh, so the Portuguese have developed this technique of planting sugarcane in these islands near Portugal.
mm,
So they bring all this technique to Brazil. They didn't find useful the natives. They tried first to enslave the
mm,
natives Indians. They were very unaware of that. So they end up or killing themselves because they didn't understand this slavery. Why slavery?
mm.
Because they are connected to the nature,
Nature, yeah.
and whatever they could, they escape, and nobody could find them because they know the forest and everything better than the wilderness, better the Portuguese. In
Mm.
the other hand, the Portuguese developed these trades of slaves from Africa that you know well how
So
it worked.
just why we have a great number of African descendants, Brazilian in James. So
Exactly.
how the conversion? I'm guessing that when the Portuguese came, they came with their religion. How was the process of uh, converting the natives and the African that came? Did they let them exercise their religion, or did they trying to impose, I'm guessing, the Catholicism, correct?
Yes, as I told you, one great sociologist in Brazil, he compared the two types of colonization of Spanish and Portuguese.
What is his
The
name?
Portuguese, Sérgio Buarque de Holanda,
Okay.
he's very famous. His son is a very famous musician in Brazil.
Mm,
He divided and he called the Spanish as the city builders because the Spanish start to build cities in America,
okay.
while the Portuguese only want to exploit the nature.
Mm,
And he called the Portuguese the sowers. They only put seeds in the ground and came to collect. But as a matter of fact, the Catholic Church, he made what they call missions. There's even a movie. They did it in Portuguese and Spanish America. They create a great structure only for priests, and the priest goes to the tribals and try to convert the Indians. But here's an interesting thing. It during that time raised the idea of the good savage, that the person, the Indians in Brazil, because it was so wealthy, some people believe that the country was, as a matter of fact, the Eden Garden. And the mind of the time is different. We were talking about the beginning of the Renaissance.
Okay.
So the priests believed that first they tried to convert the Indians. They didn't accept it. Of course, they didn't understand what is this, and was very difficult. They tried by force, and in the end, since the Indians were very resistant and they would leave the land and escape, they were not very successful with that. Eventually, the expansion of the plantations and later in the 19th century, in the 18th century, they found gold and there was a gold rush, and this pushed more and more the natives out of the space. With the Africans, it was forced, but you must have an idea that the people lived pretty much in isolation. There's this big farm. The guy is completely dependent from any trade that someone would bring to him, any goods, and they have the slaves. The slaves usually they live in a separate house that we called senzalas. Inside the senzalas, you cannot control what they did, so they did worship their gods. They sing their songs.
Okay.
Much of our Brazilian music, like samba, it's completely related to African culture.
Okay.
The music from Bahia, that's very famous, it's completely related to that. Of course, they sing in Portuguese with words in Yoruba or other languages, Bantu languages from Africa that influenced this, what we call the African religions that stayed in the country. The church eventually, when it started to build cities, the church forced, and until 1824, the Catholic Church, the Christian Catholic religion was the official, not only the official, but the obligatory religion of the place.
Okay.
So what happened, another important aspect of that is that since the slaves and previous slaves, they cannot worship the deities, they cannot do the representations the way they like because they are curbed because of that, of the Catholic Church. They start to do what we call syncretism. So they would go to the church and they would associate the deities with the saints of Catholic Church.
Oh, okay.
In some churches in Brazil, for example, people are very strong devotee of Saint George.
Okay.
That's a warrior, and he's depicted as riding a white horse with Roman armor, killing a dragon. The Afro religions, they associate with one of the orishas, they call one of the deities.
Okay.
Santa Barbara.
What is the name again?
Orishas.
Okay.
It's the name of the deities. It's the group of deities. In the Spanish countries that they have what we call Santeria. They call it orijas. So it's the same. It's the same. Same word with a Portuguese and Spanish accent.
Okay.
And this syncretism took a long time for the Catholic Church to understand that.
Mm.
And eventually they found weird because people would go to the church to pray for St. George, Santa Barbara, or other saint, but not for Christ. And they took long to figure out, and they start, for example, in some church, there are some records that in some church they took the images of St. George,
Mm.
or it's even there's some books in literature that exploit this aspect of this kind of thing. There's
What?
a movie called uh, it's a man that made a promise in a temple, in an African temple
Okay.
for Saint Barbara, and
Mm.
he said that if he's granted his wish, he will carry a cross until the church of
Mm.
Saint Barbara.
Okay.
And when he get there, he explained the priest that he made this kind of deal.
Mm.
The priest closed the door, say, "You cannot enter."
What is the name of the movie?
It's the devotee. I don't know in English, but in Portuguese it's pagador de promessa. I can send you the
Uh,
name.
okay.
It even was regarded to be in the festival, I believe, of uh, European Festival,
Okay.
Cannes, I believe. But
Mm.
I'm gonna tell you more in more detail later. You can put it.
Okay.
Uh, so this is
And
the
can you cite few books that related to what you're talking about? Mm. Do
yeah,
you know a book?
for the formation of the society of Brazil, and also this very starting point of the formation of society and how it came from this kind of colonization. There are
Okay.
two books. One is The Roots of Brazil,
Okay. Who
that's
wrote
from
it?
Sérgio Buarque de Holanda, that I say, and the other is, I don't know the name in English, is Casa Grande Senzala, from it's the second bigger sociologist in
Okay.
Brazil, and
Mm.
he deals a lot with this issue regarding the this clash between the white man and the African people in during the colonization, and
What
how it.
what is his name? Mm.
His name is, I can check for you quickly here.
Mm.
Gilberto Freire.
Okay. Mm.
The name is Casagrande Senzala.
Mm.
It's a huge book and tells about how this happened in Brazil. Another interesting source, it's one is a historian of Brazil that's called Boris Fausto. He
Okay.
wrote a lot of book, and he have a very short one that's
Okay.
called History of Brazil,
Mm.
and he tells all this part of from colonization until around 1960 in Brazil.
So I'm guessing after a colonization, Brazil obtained its independence. When that thing happened? When did they obtain independence?
Well, the independence of Brazil, in a short way, is, as you know, the France made the French Revolution,
Okay.
and the French Revolution, it was motivated by the Illuminism.
Mm.
One of the groups that really made a great weight on that was the Freemason, and the
Mm.
Freemasons were very strong in Portugal and in Brazil. When Napoleon, after he took control of France, he threatened to invade Portugal. The king transferred the kingdom of the center of the kingdom from of Portugal from Lisbon to Rio.
Oh, okay.
So Brazil was the capital of Portugal.
Mm.
Rio de Janeiro was the capital of Portugal for some time. When Napoleon fell down and Portugal was free again, the king came back, but his son stayed.
Mm.
And after some dispute, his son declared Brazil independent.
Okay.
There was a small war about that, but it not really a great some battles
Mm.
with between Brazil and Portugal, but Portugal knew that sending ships to attack a very vast area, a very large country that was Portugal didn't have probably didn't have way to control all these people that live there. It would be very costly, and also for Brazil was not big deal to make a war. So they decided, and Brazil paid sum of money to Portugal, and we are free. The first emperor, the first ruler of Brazil, this emperor, Dom Pedro, he made the first constitution. And this constitution, there's one thing that was very interesting. Instead of stating the three powers, that's the judiciary, the executive, and the legislative branch.
When was the first constitution was
1824. 1824.
1824. Okay. So yeah. Basically, the emperor, who is the son of the king, if I'm not mistaken, was it?
The king was Dom João.
Okay.
Dom John, and he was the king of Portugal, and the son, the prince, was Dom Pedro I.
Okay, he's the one. Who is the
yeah.
one who was self-proclaimed himself as an emperor, correct?
Yeah, he proclaimed himself emperor. He was the leader of the independence.
Okay.
So was clear. So they made this constitution. He was a very he's regarded by the books of history as a man very, I would say, worried about the development of the land.
Okay.
So while he was, he created schools, he wants to invest in technology,
he was a progressist,
development.
We can say.
Yeah, he was a progressist. And he didn't rule for a long time. Of course, we have a coup d'etat, and there is a proclaimed republic. Not long after that, the first, for you have an idea, he made the first constitution in 1824. And there's I think very interesting that he said that the official religion was Catholic.
Okay.
But
during the first constitution.
Yeah, but there's freedom of religion of any other religion in the domestically, practical domestic. So practically he said in the interpretation we can have is that, okay, we can have a church, must be Catholic, but we cannot have a temple for any other religion.
Oh, okay.
But it set forth the liberty of religion, because although you cannot create what we call in the Afro religions terreiro, which is the temple where they worship, they practice their religion, you cannot do that. In the future, what happens that, okay, people are practicing what they're gonna do, and the first constitution was already saying that you can follow any religion.
Okay, if I have a understanding, during the first constitution, the official language was Catholicism. Catholic was the things. They can create churches and things. But underneath it, people are free to exercise their own religion, but the only thing they cannot create a temple or a place of worship, correct?
Was it only domestically? Only domestically. That's the weird thing of the and we understand that, like the power of the church in that time. The thing that this is interesting because the first the emperor of Brazil, the first ruler, he was Freemasonic.
Okay.
And there's a dispute. There's a big dispute between Freemasonry and church, and that's the base of separation of religion and state. So the first constitution already separate religion from state, but says, okay, we are a Catholic country.
Okay.
You can practice any other religion since it's in your home. This part about practice domestically, it really fell over the other constitutions. Officially, we regard that we have 7 constitutions during our history. In
Okay.
1824, this was the first. In 1891, we have the second, when we have the beginning of the Republic. In 1934, we have another one when we have a dictatorship right before the Second World War. It was a very popular leader, Getúlio Vargas. He made a very great advance, specifically in the labor law in Brazil is still related to him. We have a labor law that still has a lot of things that he did in 1834. In 1937, they made another constitution. After he left, not after he left, he made another constitution. And the only thing about religion, he put that you are free to, there's no official religion since 1891, since the first republic.
Okay.
And the only thing that's strange in these constitutions is, for example, in the 1937, they say you can practice any religion, but you have to obey the public order and the good customs, which are very open, how to say, concepts.
Okay.
Which mean that would be decided by the courts. And of course, what is the public order? There's a lot of prejudice against African religions, and also the native religions.
Okay.
And this prejudice is related to two great things. Is the natives, they know the medicines that they use naturally. And people would eventually go to a shaman, what we call pajé in Brazil. For any consult, he would give some medicine. Poor people used to do that. And the society would say that these are quackers, they are people trying to take money from people and things like that. It's part of the religion. Also, some African religions, they did sacrifice with chickens, for example. This is called black magic, and it's contrary to our public order. So this kind of thing really pressure the change, the I would say the freedom of liberty was controlled by society, not by the law. But finally, in 1988, our last constitution, it regarded that you have freedom of the protection of religion, but also the places where you exert religion. So that's why we have some religions that the people use drugs while they doing it for their religion in the place of worship. There usually there's no any effect regarding that.
Okay.
The problem, that's why we have a different aspect regarding that than United States, that some native tribals cannot use peyote, for example, for their worship because it's prohibited by American law. And basically what we have until normally today, our constitution are very this is respected. It's very low litigated about lack of respect to the liberty of religion. But we have what we have is some religious leader advocating that this or that religion is not good, it's against this or against that, that it's considered prejudice, and it usually ends up the guy asking for assuming the guilt and not litigating this, but only get some effect in the media or something like that.
Okay. So we have 7 minutes left in our conversation. I just wanna know a little bit what kind of advice can you share when it comes to the freedom of religion in Brazil and how to make it, you know, a true right for whoever wanna practice whatever they want, so they can do so.
Well, really, we don't have much issues about that. The great idea is if you practice religion, practice is doesn't need to be something very does you cannot avoid to let it open. But be aware that if you're doing something that can shock the community, for example, if your religion allows you to use drugs or things that for you to transcend or get contact with your divinity, it's by using drugs. It doesn't mean that you can do this at open in the middle of the street.
Yeah.
It's not the proper place. So much more, we have a great diversity of religions. We don't have a lot of immigrants, but you can find in Brazil as a whole temples for Buddhism, Chinese religion in the big cities of the country.
So now
Muslims, all types.
people are free to exercise their religion and they are free to build the temples without any issue. Is it the case?
Yes, but be aware that the only thing that you might have regarding building temples is local municipality regulations.
Okay, so
regarding
sometimes if
yeah.
they don't agree with your religion, they may make it difficult for you.
No, they don't make it. They make it, for example, there's a big church they created in one city, for example, that they have an issue with parking lot.
Oh, okay.
Because the at the time the municipality said, oh, there's going to be, so instead it was a very wealthy church.
Okay.
So they bought a parking lot. So the traffic in the downtown, because they create a church in downtown, very heavy traffic, was not so much affected. But pretty much you just said, well, I have this place of land, I'm going to build a temple. It's up to you and your community.
Okay.
It's just build it.
So you feel like despite the history of discriminating religious minorities today in Brazil, those religious minority like Africans, the Indian religion, those are respected under the Brazilian constitution.
Under the Brazilian constitution, they are. But remember, it doesn't mean that we got rid of the prejudice.
Okay.
A lot of people still have a lot of prejudice, especially with native and with African religions.
Okay.
And they're African related because what happened, some religions came from this African religions, but they are not exactly what they are practicing in Africa anymore. But they are unique in Brazil. In terms of anthropology and sociology, they are the riches of our culture. But still, there are a lot of people that, how to say, preach and make speech against that, saying that it's not a proper religion. This kind of thing, it will take much more time. But as the state cannot interfere with religion anymore.
Okay, so you think how prejudices are manifested through violence or through major criticism, or those same leaders, religious leaders that stand up and criticize? How did they manifest their criticism? Is it violent?
I'll give an example. In 2002, there was a priest of evangelic church that he went on TV. He has a TV show, and he kicked the image of Holy Mary on TV. And the Catholic Church say, "Hey, what's happening?" Didn't end up in a litigation. There was a denounce, and people started litigation. They dropped because the guy say, "Okay," came to the TV again. "I'm sorry, I should not have done that. I didn't know where I'm." But these are the things. but much more is that thing that we call institutionalized, that the preacher go to a church and go to the community and say, don't go to that kind of temple, don't deal with people with that, because this religion this, that religion is that, and this kind still exists. We inherited a little of prejudice that the Catholic Church has with the Jewish too. So this kind of it's a mixture of things, and although we respect in the law, people still have this judgment for what is different.
Okay.
This takes a lot of time. You know how it is.
Yeah, but can you name a case that has been very popular in litigation? Is it there a case?
No, that's another thing
So
is
often
whenever
when
they
there are issues, they don't bring it to court. They are trying to resolve it.
no, when the thing reach the place of litigation this kind, they have to call the DA, make an announce to the police, and police investigate and go to the DA.
Okay.
What happens that a lot of these some religions, they don't want this bad negative propaganda, so they deal to drop the case before they investigate. They say, hey, I know what's happening. For example, if you have moral suffering in Brazil, today is limited to something around $2,000. Doesn't matter if you litigate your case until the Supreme Court, you're gonna get this number. If you litigate in religious case will be deemed like that, a moral harassment or things like that. So the law as applicable is not very enforceable on that. But pretty much we have the freedom of religion, but the prejudice is still going on.
Today, I have Mr. Alexandre, who is a lawyer from Brazil. We're running out of time, but I just want to take the time and say thank you very much for the time you've given us to talk about freedom of religion in Brazil.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to contribute with the human rights under the tree. Thank you very much, Alpha.
And I look forward to having more conversation on other human rights issues in Brazil.
It's going to be a